Have you ever wondered what happens when empathy becomes more dangerous than war? When a single act of compassion rewrites the laws that hold an entire species together? The year was 2641, 2 decades after the human Ythari ceasefire, a fragile peace built on silence. But on a glass world beneath twin suns, a ship fell from the sky, and one human soldier broke the only rule that kept the galaxy stable. Do not interfere. Sergeant Daniel Reeve didn't mean to change history. He only meant to save one life, a stranger trapped in fire. But on Ithara, saving a princess meant binding 2 souls forever. Now, one man's mercy will force 2 civilizations to remember what they buried, the meaning of touch, the cost of connection, and the terrifying beauty of what it means to be human. Because sometimes, love isn't peace, it's evolution. Before we begin, subscribe, like, and tell me from which city or planet you're watching this. This story explores one of humanity's greatest paradoxes: why compassion, not conquest, changes the universe. The wreckage was still burning when Sergeant Daniel Reeve found her. Ithara's crystal forests refracted the flames into 1,000 colors, turning the crash site into something almost beautiful. Almost. Daniel's boots crunched through shattered glass trees, his rifle tracking shadows through the blue mist that clung to everything on this world. The diplomatic transport had gone down hard, its hull split like a broken promise across the valley floor. He shouldn't have been here. Mission parameters were clear, reconnaissance only, no contact with survivors. But when his scanner picked up the biosign trapped in the wreckage, something in Daniel's chest tightened. The same something that had gotten him court-martialed twice and decorated 3 times. She was pinned beneath a twisted support beam, her body glowing faintly in the smoke. Silver skin, hair like fiber optic cables, shifting from white to pale blue, eyes that flickered between violet and gold as they found his face. Ithari, one of the beings humanity had spent a decade fighting, then another decade trying not to fight. Daniel knelt beside her, assessing. The beam was too heavy, the fire spreading fast. 60 seconds, maybe less. The woman's lips moved, but no sound came. Instead, patterns of light rippled across her skin, flowing like water through the translucent veins beneath. Daniel had seen Ithari communication before, from a distance. It was beautiful, incomprehensible. He grabbed the beam with his prosthetic arm. The N7A42 servos whined as he lifted, muscles burning in his real arm, the old wound in his side screaming. The woman slid free. Before she could react, Daniel scooped her into his arms and ran. The explosion came 30 seconds later, turning the wreckage into a pillar of white fire that lit up the twilight sky. Daniel hit the ground, curling his body around hers, feeling the heat wash over his back. When the roar faded, he looked down. Her eyes were locked on his face, wide and unblinking, lights chasing themselves across her skin in patterns he couldn't read. Later, in the medical bay of the Earth Peace Force frigate, Captain Elena Voss stood over his cot with her arms crossed. 42 years old, gray threading through her black hair, the look of someone who had buried too many friends. "Mission log from Ithara 447, she said, her voice flat. "Survivor located. Non-contact protocols ignored. Sergeant Reeve justified action as, quote, instinct." Daniel stared at the ceiling. His side was bandaged, his prosthetic arm in pieces on the workbench. "She was alive, Captain." "That's not the point." "Then what is?" Eleanor was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Command wants you grounded. Psych eval. Again." Daniel closed his eyes. In the darkness behind his eyelids, he saw faces. His squad. 18 names he couldn't forget. 18 coffins he'd helped carry. He'd saved 47 Ithari civilians that day, disobeying orders to extract his team first. Command called it a tactical waste. The Ithari called it nothing. They didn't have a word for what he'd done. "The woman you pulled out," Elena continued. "Her name is Serenia Kathir. She's not just Ithari. She's the crown princess of Maranth. Daniel opened his eyes. I didn't know. Would it have mattered? He thought about that. About the weight of her in his arms, light as air, the desperate pulse of light across her skin. No. 3 days later, they took him to Maranth. The city hung in the sky like a cluster of stars, massive towers of crystalline material that caught and refracted light in impossible ways. Everything was pale, luminescent, cold. As their shuttle descended through the clouds, Daniel watched Ithari moving through the transparent streets, gliding rather than walking, their bodies radiating soft light that painted the air around them. The landing platform was crowded. Hundreds of Ithari stood in perfect silence, their skin glowing in shades of white and pale blue. Daniel stepped off the shuttle in his dress uniform, Elena at his side, and every eye turned toward him. Then they knelt. All of them. Hundreds of Ithari, folding to the ground like a wave, their lights pulsing in perfect synchronization. A sound rose from them, not quite singing, more like the hum of electricity through wire. It made Daniel's teeth ache. What's happening? He whispered. Elena's face was pale. I don't know. Sirenia Kathir emerged from the crowd. She wore robes of translucent material that seemed to be made of solidified light, and her hair floated around her head like she was underwater. The veins of light beneath her skin pulsed brighter as she approached, and Daniel realized he could almost read them. Anxiety, determination, something else. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough that he could see the individual filaments of her hair, the way her eyes shifted color with each breath. When she spoke, it was in perfect English, though her voice had a harmonic quality that felt like it came from everywhere at once. Daniel Reeve, she said, you saved my life. Just doing my job, Your Highness. No. She shook her head, and for a moment, her lights flared red, bright enough to cast shadows. The Galactic Codex classifies Withari as Class 3 telepathic species. Our communication is bioluminescent, true, but it is also empathic. We share truth through light. When you touched me, when you pulled me from the fire, your intent was clear. Not duty, choice. Daniel frowned. I don't understand. An older Ithari stepped forward, taller than the others, his skin so pale it was almost transparent. Ancient veins of light pulsed slowly beneath like dying stars. I am Thelkir, keeper of traditions. What you have done, human, has not been done in over 3,000 years. According to the laws of Maranth, when a member of the royal bloodline is saved from death, the savior becomes Katen. Bonded. Bonded to what? Sirenia's lights shifted, cycling through colors Daniel had never seen on a Ythari before. Amber, rose, gold. To me, she said quietly, forever. The medical scanner in Elena's datapad chimed. She glanced at it, then went very still. Daniel, I'm picking up unusual neural activity, synchronized patterns, you and the princess. What does that mean? It means the fire bond has begun, Thelkir said, and his lights flared in what might have been alarm or satisfaction. Daniel couldn't tell. Biometric scan confirms neural synchronization at 23%. Prognosis, irreversible within 72 hours. Daniel looked at Sirenia. She looked back, and in her alien eyes, he saw something terrifyingly human. Fear. I didn't ask for this, he said. Neither did I, she replied. But my people do not lie, Sergeant Reeve. The light does not lie, and every Ythari in this city can see the truth. You chose to save me, not because you had to, because you saw me. No one has seen me in a very long time. The crowd began to chant again, that electric hum building into something that made Daniel's bones vibrate. Around them, the pale towers of Maranth began to shift color, just slightly. A tinge of warmth creeping into the cold light. Red mixing with white, like sunrise bleeding into snow. Elena touched his arm. Daniel, we need to talk about this. but he couldn't look away from Serenia. From the patterns racing across her skin, the desperate pulse of her lights. And deep in his chest, beneath the scar tissue and the survivor's guilt and the bone-deep exhaustion of 10 years at war, something stirred. Something he thought had died with his squad on a frozen moon in the Orion frontier. "What happens?" he asked, his voice rough. "If I say no?" Serenia's lights dimmed. "Then we both die. The fire bond cannot be broken once begun. Our life energies are already intertwining. Within 3 days, our neural patterns will be inseparable. If one dies, the other follows." Daniel laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound in the crystalline silence. "Of course. Why would anything in my life ever be simple?" For the first time, Serenia's expression changed. Her lips quirked upward, just slightly, mimicking a human smile with heartbreaking awkwardness. "I suspect, Daniel Reeve, that simple is not what you were made for." And as the towers of Maranth continued to shift, bleeding warmth into their ancient cold light, Daniel realized with a sinking certainty that she was right. The room they gave him was beautiful and alien and completely wrong. Walls of crystalline material that shifted between transparent and opaque depending on the light. No furniture in the human sense, just platforms that seemed to grow from the floor. Everything glowed with that same pale luminescence that made Daniel feel like he was living inside a fluorescent tube. He'd been there for 8 days, and he still couldn't sleep. The nightmares didn't help. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them. Martinez, grinning as he shared his last ration bar. Chen, humming old Earth songs while cleaning her rifle. Okoro, who'd promised to teach Daniel to cook properly once they got home. All gone. All dead, because he'd chosen to save strangers instead of his own. On the 9th day, Serenia came to his door. She stood in the entrance, lights pulsing uncertainly across her skin, and Daniel realized it was the first time she'd visited him alone. There were always attendants before, or Thelkir with his ancient disapproval radiating from every pore, or Elena trying to negotiate some impossible diplomatic solution to a biological inevitability. "I thought," Serenia said carefully, "that you might want to learn." "Learn what?" "To speak as we do." She raised one hand, palm up, and light flickered across her skin in complex patterns. "If we are to be bonded, perhaps we should be able to understand each other." Daniel almost said no. Almost told her to leave, to let him rot in this beautiful cage until the firebond killed them both. But something in the way she stood there, carefully not crossing the threshold, lights dimming with each second of silence, stopped him. "Okay," he said. "Teach me." It was harder than he'd expected. The Ithari communicated through bioluminescence, patterns of light that carried meaning on multiple levels simultaneously. Intensity, color, rhythm, even the specific veins that pulsed mattered. It was like trying to speak with his entire body at once. Serenia was patient, more patient than he deserved. She showed him how to focus, how to feel the intent behind the light, rather than just seeing it. And slowly, over hours that bled into days, Daniel began to understand. The first word he managed to transmit was "thank you." His skin didn't glow, of course. He was human, as solid and opaque as stone. But Serenia could feel his intent through the firebond, read the meaning in the micro-expressions of his face, the tension in his shoulders, the rhythm of his breathing. When he finally got it right, focusing everything he had into those 2 words, her lights blazed so bright he had to look away. "You did it," she whispered. And there were tears on her face. Not water, but drops of crystallized light that fell and shattered on the floor like tiny stars. The entire palace felt it. They all stopped to listen. Daniel felt heat creep up his neck. I didn't mean to broadcast to everyone. It was beautiful. Her hand moved toward his, hesitated, pulled back. "May I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why do you hate touch?" The question hit like a physical blow. Daniel stood, paced to the window, stared out at the glowing city. "I don't hate it. You flinch every time I come close. Your heart rate increases. The fire bond shows me your distress. It's not you. Then what is it? Daniel closed his eyes. In the medical database back on the frigate, there was a file. Patient presence with dissociative traits. Seeks extreme risk situations. Recommendation: medical leave denied due to personnel shortages. He'd read it once, then never looked again. After my squad died, he said quietly, I stopped letting people get close, physical or otherwise. It's easier to lose people when you never really had them. Serenia was silent for a long moment. Then she moved to stand beside him, careful to leave a foot of space between them. Her reflection in the window was beautiful and strange, lights pulsing in patterns he was beginning to recognize as sadness. Our people chose light over flesh over 3,000 years ago, she said. After the Shadow War, physical contact became taboo. Touch was seen as a vector for violence, for pain. We locked ourselves in light and called it purity. Do you believe that? I did. Until you grabbed my hand in the fire and pulled me free. Until I felt what it meant to be held, to be seen as flesh, not just light. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. Day 8 of the fire bond. I wrote in my light journal, he has hands. I had forgotten that we do too. Something in Daniel's chest cracked. He looked at her, really looked, and saw past the alien beauty to the person underneath. Lonely, scared, as trapped by her culture as he was by his trauma. I came to Ithara to die, he admitted. Not officially, but I'd been taking riskier missions, volunteering for the worst assignments. Elena knew. She tried to stop me. Why? Because everyone I care about dies. Because I'm tired of carrying coffins. He laughed bitterly. And then you happened. The universe's idea of a joke. I try to kill myself indirectly, and instead I get stuck in a magical marriage bond with an alien princess. Is that all I am to you? An inconvenience? Daniel looked at her, at the way her lights dimmed when she was hurt, flared when she was angry, cycled through impossible colors when she was confused, at the tears of light that crystallized on her cheeks. No, he said, and meant it. You're not. The diplomatic attempts to dissolve the fire bond continued to fail. Daniel sat through 17 meetings where human and Ythari negotiators argued in circles, trying to find some loophole in biology and tradition. The answer was always the same. The light does not lie. The fire bond persists. Synchronization now at 47%. It was Thelkir who finally explained the full implications, his ancient voice crackling like static. Your attempts are futile. Every Ythari in Maranth can sense the fire bond. It radiates from both of you like a beacon. To deny it would be to deny what we all perceive as truth. Elena slammed her fist on the table. This is a biological accident caused by an uncontrolled rescue scenario. You can't seriously expect us to accept that our soldier is now permanently bound to your government. We accept what is, Thelkir replied simply. Perhaps your difficulty lies in your refusal to do the same. That night, Daniel found Serenia on one of the observation platforms that ringed the palace. She stood at the edge, looking out over the city, and for the first time since he'd met her, she wasn't glowing. Her skin was almost dark, the veins beneath barely visible. Bad day? He asked. She didn't turn. I proposed we both accept assisted dissolution, a medical procedure, painless, simultaneous. We would simply cease, and the problem would be solved. Daniel's blood went cold. You suggested murder-suicide. I suggested mercy, for both of us. Finally, she looked at him, and her eyes were dull, lifeless. You do not want this bond. Neither do I. Why should we continue? Because giving up is the coward's way out. Is it, or is it courage to accept the inevitable? Daniel moved to stand beside her. The city spread below them like a galaxy of trapped stars, cold and beautiful and utterly inhuman. My squad died, because I chose to save your people instead of following orders. For a long time, I thought that made me a fool. Or a coward. Or maybe just cursed. And now? Now I don't know. But I know giving up won't bring them back. And it won't fix whatever's broken in either of us. Serenya's lights flickered. A pattern he'd learned meant uncertainty. What do you propose instead? We try. For real this time. We stop fighting the fire bond and start figuring out what it means. Maybe we find a way to live with it. Maybe we don't. But at least we'll know we tried something other than running. That is very human of you. I'll take that as a compliment. For the first time in days, Serenya's lights brightened. Not much, but enough. She raised her hand, held it out between them. Teach me something human. Daniel looked at her hand, at the delicate fingers that were almost but not quite like his own. Then he reached out and took it. The touch was electric. Serenya gasped, her lights flaring so bright Daniel had to squint. Her whole body shook, not with pain but with sensation, as if every nerve was firing at once. She didn't pull away. "This is what touch feels like?" she whispered. "Yeah. It is overwhelming. You get used to it." "I do not think I want to." Her fingers tightened around his. "Show me more. Show me what else I have forgotten." So he did. He taught her about handshakes and high fives, and the simple comfort of a hand on a shoulder. He showed her how humans used physical contact to communicate things words couldn't capture. And slowly, carefully, she began to remember what her people had buried 3,000 years ago. When Thelkir found them the next morning, still on the observation platform, Serenya's hand clasped in Daniel's. The old Ithari stood frozen in the doorway. His light cycled through patterns Daniel couldn't read, but his voice when he spoke was hoarse with something that might have been horror or wonder or both. "She is laughing," he said. "I can hear her. Sound. She is making sound." Daniel looked down. Serenya was giggling, a strange musical noise that seemed to surprise her as much as anyone else. He'd told her a terrible joke, something about an alien walking into a bar, and she hadn't understood the humor at all. But she'd laughed anyway, trying out the action like a new language. "Is that bad?" Daniel asked. Thelkir stood silent for a long time. Then he turned and left without another word. But he didn't report what he'd seen. And that, Daniel realized, was its own kind of answer. The towers were changing. Daniel noticed it first on day 15 of the fire bond. The pale crystalline spires that defined Maranth's skyline, cold and luminescent for millennia, had begun to blush. Hints of amber crept into their glow, touches of gold. The transformation was subtle, but undeniable, and it was spreading. Elena showed him the data over breakfast in his quarters. She'd aged in the weeks since they'd arrived, new lines around her eyes, gray claiming more territory in her hair. Infrared emissions from the towers are up 340%. The entire city is warming. That's impossible. That's what the Ithari engineers said, right before they started panicking. She pulled up another file. And it's not just the architecture. We're seeing physiological changes in the population. 847 Ithari have manifested thermal pigmentation. They're developing the ability to generate body heat, something their species hasn't done since the Shadow War. Daniel set down his coffee. They're becoming more like humans. Or you're infecting them. Elena's voice was carefully neutral, but he heard the worry underneath. I intercepted a transmission from a group calling themselves the Purifiers. Their leader, someone named Varzin, is calling you a virus. Says you're destroying Ithari culture from within. What do you think? Elena was quiet for a moment. I think change is terrifying, especially when you've spent 3,000 years building walls to keep it out. She met his eyes. I also think my husband died fighting these people, and part of me still wants to hate them. But watching you and Serenya, seeing how hard you're both trying, it makes it difficult to hold on to that hate. The rebellion came 3 days later. Daniel was in the market district with Serenya when the first bomb went off. The explosion ripped through a residential tower, turning crystal to shrapnel. He hit the ground on instinct, covering Serenia with his body as debris rained down. His prosthetic arm took a shard that would have pierced her skull. The second bomb detonated in the plaza ahead, the third behind. They were boxed in. Ithari screamed, a sound like breaking glass. Bodies lay in the rubble, their lights dimming, flickering, going dark. Daniel hauled Serenia to her feet and ran, dodging falling crystal, burning debris, the panicked crowd that had no concept of how to react to physical violence. A child stumbled in front of them, tiny and glowing faintly blue, crying in pulses of light Daniel could now understand as terror. Her parents were gone, lost in the chaos. Without thinking, Daniel scooped her up, held her close even as his wounded side screamed in protest, and kept moving. They made it to the palace as the city's defenses finally activated. Energy barriers shimmered into place, sealing the districts. Emergency responders flooded the damaged areas. Daniel set the child down in the palace entrance, watched a caretaker claim her, then collapsed against a wall. Serenia knelt beside him, her hands hovering over his bloodied uniform. "You are injured." "I'm fine. The firebond tells me you are lying. I can feel your pain." "Yeah, well, you're going to feel a lot worse if we don't stop whoever's doing this." Daniel pulled himself upright. "I need to talk to Thelkir. Now." The council chamber was chaos. Ithari shouted at each other in cascading waves of light, the patterns so intense and overlapping that Daniel's eyes watered. Thelkir stood at the center, ancient and unmoved, a lighthouse in a storm. "Order," he commanded, and his voice carried the weight of 2 centuries. The chamber fell silent. "The human will speak." Daniel limped forward, aware of every eye on him, every pattern of hostile light. "How many dead?" 12 of our people," Thelkir replied. "Thanks to your intervention, it was not more." "The child I carried," Daniel said, his voice rough. "She would have died if I hadn't grabbed her. So would 6 others I pulled from the rubble. You can hate me for changing your culture. You can blame me for the warmth in your towers, but I will not apologize for saving lives." A Yathari near the front, younger than Thelkir, but radiating authority, pulsed angry red. "You do not understand what you have done. You are the catalyst for division. The purifiers grow stronger every day. 25% of Maranth now supports their cause." "Then make them understand," Daniel shot back. "Show them that change doesn't mean destruction." "How? By asking them nicely?" The Yathari's lights flared. "You are human. You cannot comprehend what we risk losing. I lost my entire squad saving your civilians. I lost my career, my freedom, my life as I knew it. And now I might lose Serenia too if the purifiers succeed. So yeah, I think I understand loss just fine." Thelkir raised a hand, silencing the room. "The human speaks truth. I witnessed him save the child. Witnessed him prioritize Ithari lives over his own safety. If this is contamination, then perhaps our purity was always disease." The chamber erupted again, but this time Daniel caught threads of support in the chaos. Not much, but enough. That night, the purifiers made their demands. Varzin's transmission was broadcast across every light net in the city. Daniel watched it with Serenia, Elena, and Thelkir, listening to the rebel leader's voice carry through the speakers. "We are not terrorists. We are protectors of what we have built over millennia. The human presence poisons our essence. Already, we see Ithari embracing touch, generating heat, making sound. These are symptoms of species degradation. We demand the dissolution of the firebond, by force if necessary, and the expulsion of all human presence from Maranth." Elena muted the transmission. "They're going to attack again. Bigger this time." "Let them come," Daniel said. "I'm not running." "You are injured," Serenia said quietly. "You need rest. I need to stop people from dying. This is not your responsibility." Daniel turned to her, saw the fear in her flickering lights. "Yes, it is. I started this. I'll finish it." You cannot fight an entire rebellion alone. Then help me. Serenya's lights dimmed. You ask me to choose between my people's traditions and our bond. I'm asking you to choose what's right. They are not the same thing. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Finally, Thelkir spoke. The purifiers will strike at the central tower. It is symbolic. The heart of Maranth. If it falls, the city falls with it. How long do we have? Elena asked. Hours, perhaps less. Daniel moved to the window, stared out at the glowing city. Somewhere out there, people were preparing for war, people who believed he was a disease. And maybe they were right. Maybe he was poison, spreading through this ancient culture, burning it down without meaning to. But then he thought of the child in the plaza, the way she'd clutched his uniform, trusting him to keep her safe. The way Serenya had laughed for the first time in her life, the warmth bleeding into the cold towers. Change wasn't always destruction. Sometimes it was just necessary pain. He pulled the hardened earth from his pocket, the last piece of home he carried. Looked at it, memorized the texture, then held it out to Serenya. Keep this for me. She took it carefully, lights pulsing with confusion. Why? Because if I don't make it back, I want you to have something of Earth, something real. Daniel, you cannot. I'm going to the central tower. I'm going to stop this, and I need to know you'll be here when I get back. Serenya's lights cycled through every color he'd learned to read. Fear, anger, determination. Finally, she reached up and touched her own chest, where a small crystal had been growing beneath her skin. It was something that happened to Ithari sometimes, a physical manifestation of intense emotion. She pulled it free with a gasp, offered it to him. Crystallized light, she whispered, a piece of me, so you remember why you fight. Daniel closed his fist around it, felt it warm against his palm. Then, without thinking, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to her forehead. A kiss. The first physical affection he'd given anyone in years. Serenya made a sound, half gasp, half sob. Her whole body lit up like a star, bright enough to cast shadows across the room. When he pulled back, there were tears of light streaming down her face. Come back, she said. Please. I'll try. As Daniel left the chamber, Thelkir's voice followed him. Sergeant Reeve, today I witnessed heresy. I heard our princess laugh, make sound, express joy through flesh rather than light. And I realized something. We have been dead for 3,000 years. You're teaching us to live again. Daniel looked back. The old Ithari's lights pulsed in a pattern he'd never seen before. Pride, maybe, or hope. Don't thank me yet, Daniel said. Let's see if we survive the night first. The central tower rose above Maranth, like a frozen pillar of starlight. Daniel approached it with Elena and a squad of Ithari guards, his rifle loaded with non-lethal rounds, his prosthetic arm rebuilt and humming with power. The firebond pulsed in his chest, a steady rhythm that matched Serenya's heartbeat. She was safe in the palace. That was something. The purifiers were waiting. They emerged from the shadows in perfect formation, 50 strong, their lights blazing defiant red. At their head stood Varsin, ancient as Thelkir, but radiating cold fury. His voice boomed across the plaza. You should have left when you had the chance, human. Probably, Daniel agreed. But I've never been good at making smart choices. Then you will die making foolish ones. The battle began. The garden hung suspended in the sky, crystal platforms floating on nothing, gardens of glass flowers that chimed in the wind. Daniel found Serenya there an hour before the final assault, sitting at the edge of a platform with her legs dangling over 10,000 feet of empty air. He sat beside her. Neither spoke for a long time. I came to Ithara to die, he said finally. I told you that before, but I didn't tell you why. After my squad died, I kept seeing their faces, everywhere, in reflections, in crowds, in my dreams. 18 people I couldn't save. 18 reasons I should have died instead. Serenya's lights pulsed softly. Why are you telling me this now? Because you gave me a reason to live, and I need you to know that before whatever happens next. He pulled the crystallized tear from his pocket, held it up to the light. It refracted into a rainbow. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. She turned to him, and her eyes were infinite. Show me your memory, the one that hurts most. Daniel closed his eyes. Through the firebond, he felt her reaching for him, gentle as breath. He didn't resist. He let her see it all. The frozen moon, the ambush, his squad dying while he dragged Ithari civilians to safety, the medals they gave him after, the court-martial they threatened him with, the empty bunks, the silence. When he opened his eyes, Serenya was crying light. You carry so much pain. So do you. Not like this. Different pain, same weight. He took her hand. I need you to promise me something. If I don't make it back, don't follow me. Live, please. Someone should get a happy ending out of this disaster. Serenya's lights flared. You are asking me to break the firebond. If you die, I die. That is the nature of what we are. Then we'll both just have to survive. She laughed, that strange musical sound that still seemed to surprise her. You are insane. All humans are insane. Probably. Is it working? Terrifyingly well. She leaned into him, rested her head on his shoulder. Her skin was warm now, no longer the cold crystal it had been when they met. The heat spread through his shirt. I love you, Daniel Reeve. I do not know if that is the firebond speaking or my heart, but I know it is true. Daniel felt something in his chest crack open. I love you too, and I'm sorry I'm human and broken and probably going to get us both killed. I am not. She kissed him then, properly, and her lips tasted like lightning and honey. I would choose you again. Every time. They sat there until the sun set, hands clasped, lights intertwining. Two beings from different worlds, bound by choice and biology, and something that transcended both. The battle for Maranth began at midnight. The purifiers attacked with suppression technology that blocked bioluminescent communication. Suddenly, the Ithari defenders were blind, unable to coordinate, panic spreading through their ranks like wildfire. Daniel watched it happen from the central tower's command center, saw Varzin's strategy unfold with terrible efficiency. They are going to win, Thelkir said, his voice hollow. Without light, we cannot fight. Then we fight differently. Daniel grabbed his rifle, checked the charge. His prosthetic arm hummed as he activated combat mode. Elena, coordinate with whatever Ithari can still function. Thelkir, get me to Varzin. If I can disable that suppressor, your people can see again. You will be killed. Probably. Let's make it count. He ran. The plaza was chaos. Purifiers advanced in perfect formation, their own lights protected by personal shields. Ithari defenders stumbled in the darkness, firing blindly, hitting their own people as often as the enemy. Daniel wove through the combat, his human eyes giving him an advantage the Ithari lacked. He could see in darkness. A purifier turned, energy weapon charging. Daniel put 2 non-lethal rounds in its chest, watched it fall. Another. He was halfway to the suppressor when something hit him from behind, hard enough to crack ribs. He went down, tasting blood. Through the firebond, he felt Serenya's terror. She was in the palace, safe, but she could feel his pain as if it were her own. He tried to push reassurance through the connection, tried to tell her he was okay, but the pain was too much. A purifier stood over him, weapon pointed at his head. Daniel closed his eyes, thought of Earth, of his squad, of Serenya's laugh. Not a bad way to go, all things considered. The shot never came. When he opened his eyes, Serenya stood between him and the purifier, her body blazing with light so bright the enemy recoiled. She had left the palace, abandoned safety. Come for him. You are hurt, she said, not taking her eyes off the threat. I'm fine. The firebond says otherwise. She helped him up, and Daniel felt strength flowing through their connection, her energy supplementing his failing body. We finish this together. They fought as one. Daniel's tactical mind combined with Serenya's ability to sense Yathari positions through the suppression field. She guided. He executed. They moved through the battle like a single organism, covering each other's weaknesses, amplifying each other's strengths. The suppressor was in the center of the plaza, a massive device pulsing with anti-light technology. Varzin stood beside it, ancient and terrible, his lights burning cold blue. You should not have come, human. Your presence has already destroyed too much. I didn't destroy anything, Daniel gasped, clutching his ribs. I just held up a mirror, made you see what you'd become. We were perfect. You were dead. There's a difference. Varzin's lights flared. You know nothing of what we sacrificed, the wars we fought, the price we paid for peace. You're right. I don't. But I know what sacrifice looks like. I know what it means to lose everything protecting something you believe in. Daniel straightened, despite the pain. You want to protect your culture? Then protect it. But you're trying to kill a scared child in a bombed-out plaza to do it. You're murdering your own people. That's not protection. That's just fear. For a moment, Varzin's lights flickered. Uncertainty. Doubt. Then the tower above them exploded. Debris rained down in lethal shards. Daniel threw himself over Serenya, felt his back shred as crystal tore through uniform and flesh. His prosthetic arm sparked, servos screaming, then went dead. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The world narrowed to pain and the taste of blood. Through the firebond, Serenya felt everything. His agony became hers. She screamed, not in light but in sound, a terrible human wail that echoed across the battlefield. Daniel, stay with me. Please, stay. Sorry, he managed. Looks like I made another stupid choice. Her hands glowed as she reached for him, and Daniel realized what she was about to do. Energy transfer, the forbidden technique. She was going to give him her life force to save him. Don't, he gasped. It will kill you. Then we die together, as we were always meant to. Serenya, please. I love you, Daniel Reeve. I am sorry we did not have more time. Light exploded from her hands, pouring into him in waves. Daniel felt his wounds begin to close, felt strength return to his limbs. But through the fire bond, he also felt her fading. She was burning herself out to keep him alive. No, he said, and grabbed her wrists. Not like this. Together. Remember? He reversed the flow. Instead of taking her energy, he gave his own. But something strange happened. Their life forces met in the middle, intertwined, began to resonate. The fire bond activated fully, 100% synchronization, and suddenly they were not two beings sharing energy, but one being experiencing existence through two bodies. The explosion was visible from orbit. Daniel and Serenya rose together, their forms blurring, merging, becoming a pillar of fire and light that towered over the plaza. Every Ithari and Maranth felt it, a wave of heat and emotion that washed through the city like a tsunami. The cold towers blazed, the pale lights erupted into color, and for the first time in 3 millennia, Ithari felt warmth. Varzin fell to his knees, his weapons forgotten. Impossible. This is impossible. But it was happening. The fusion was complete. Daniel and Serenya existed in superposition, neither alive nor dead, neither separate nor together, transcendent and terrible and beautiful. When they spoke, it was with two voices in perfect harmony. Not impossible, just unexpected, like everything human. The light intensified, became too bright to see. When it finally faded, the plaza was empty. Daniel and Serenya were gone. But in the sky above Maranth, two auroras danced, one gold and one red, intertwining like lovers, like light and fire, like everything they had been and everything they had become. Thelkir stood in the plaza, tears of light streaming down his face, and transmitted a message that every Ithari in the galaxy would receive. We witnessed the impossible today. Two beings became one. Two souls chose each other against every law of biology and culture. And in doing so, they saved us all. Elena Voss stood in the plaza where Daniel had disappeared, one hand pressed to her chest. The auroras above painted her face in shifting colors, red and gold, fire and light. She'd lost her husband to the Ithari wars. Now she'd lost the closest thing to a son she'd ever had. But somehow, looking up at those impossible lights, she didn't feel grief. She felt hope. "He would have liked this," she said to Thelkir, who stood beside her in the ruins. The dramatic exit, the impossible ending. "Very, Daniel." The old Ithari's lights pulsed with something between sadness and joy. "They are not gone. Not truly. Every Ithari in Maranth can feel them. Their presence lingers in our light sense, neither alive nor dead, both separate and together. That's not much comfort to those of us who can't sense light." "No, I suppose it is not." Thelkir looked at her, and for the first time since she'd arrived on Maranth, his expression was something Elena recognized as compassion. "You cared for him. He was an idiot, reckless, self-destructive." Elena's voice cracked. "And he was the best of us. He reminded me why I joined the Peace Force in the first place. Not to fight, to protect, to see people as people, not as enemies. He taught us the same lesson, at terrible cost." In the days that followed, Maranth transformed. The council met in emergency session and emerged with a unanimous decree. The ancient prohibition against physical touch was abolished. A new holiday was established, the Day of Fire, celebrating the union of Daniel Reeve and Serenia Kathir. Most shocking of all, the Purifier survivors, including Varsin, were pardoned. It was Varsin himself who spoke at the first memorial service. His lights no longer burned cold blue, but flickered with warmer tones, uncertain and new. "I dedicated 200 years to preserving what we were. I saw the human as disease, as contamination. I was wrong. He was not destroying our culture. He was reminding us of what we had lost, the capacity to feel, to touch, to choose connection despite pain. I killed 12 of our people trying to stop him. That blood will stain my light forever. But I will spend the rest of my existence ensuring their sacrifice was not in vain." Elena watched the ceremony from the back, translators rendering the light speech into audio she could understand. Beside her, a young Ithari child reached up and took her hand. Elena looked down, startled. The child smiled, an expression copied from humans, awkward but genuine. "Thank you for the sergeant," the child said in halting English. "He saved me, in the plaza. I want to be brave like him." Elena knelt, pulled the child into a hug. The Ithari stiffened, then slowly relaxed, leaning into the embrace. Through her translator, Elena heard the child's parent gasp, then begin to cry. Not tears of horror, tears of recognition, of remembering what it felt like to hold their offspring. 18 months later, Elena returned to Maranth for the dedication of the memorial. She'd been promoted to ambassador, tasked with maintaining human-Ithari relations. It was exhausting work, but every time she wanted to quit, she looked at the photo she kept on her desk. Daniel, grinning despite the scars, arm around Serenia, whose lights blazed with barely contained joy. Both of them terrible at being happy but trying anyway. The city had changed. The towers still glowed, but now they burned with warm colors, gold and amber and rose. Ithari walked the streets touching, embracing, even holding hands. The birth rate had exploded, increasing by 340%. For the first time in 2 centuries, the population was growing rather than slowly dying. Thelkir met her at the memorial site, now bent with age but still radiating quiet authority. "Ambassador Voss, welcome home. Is that what Maranth is now? Home?" For many humans, yes. We have had over 5,000 requests for immigration. Artists, musicians, poets. People who wish to learn light speech and teach sound song. The cultural exchange Daniel hoped for is becoming real. The memorial itself was beautiful and strange. 2 statues, human and Ithari, reaching for each other. But the space between their hands was not empty. There, suspended by some technology Elena didn't understand, floated a sphere of pure energy. Red and gold swirled together, pulsing with a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. "Is that them?" she asked. "A fragment, an echo. We do not fully understand what happened during the fusion, but sometimes, when the sphere pulses, we hear whispers. His voice, her light, memories bleeding through." Thelkir moved closer, placed one hand near the sphere. "They are not gone, Ambassador. They are simply elsewhere. Everywhere. Nowhere. Both." Elena reached out, let her fingers hover near the sphere. It warmed her skin. And for just a moment she could have sworn she heard Daniel's laugh. That rough, ugly sound that meant he was genuinely happy. "He would have hated being a statue," she said. "Then he will be relieved to know we have also named a ship after him. The EPFS Bonded, captained by the child he saved from the plaza." She wanted to honor his sacrifice by protecting others. He would have liked that better. They stood in silence for a while, watching Ithari children play around the memorial, their lights bright and fearless, touching each other without hesitation. A group of human teenagers practiced light speech nearby, their attempts clumsy but earnest. One Ithari elder sat with a human musician, trying to understand the concept of rhythm, while the human struggled to sense harmonic light. This was Daniel's legacy, not the dramatic sacrifice, not the impossible fusion, but this. People from 2 worlds learning to see each other, to touch, to choose connection despite difference. Varzin approached, moving slowly, his ancient body finally showing its age. "Ambassador, I wanted to speak with you before you returned to Earth." Elena tensed. This was the being who had tried to kill Daniel, who had bombed the plaza, who had led the purifiers. But his lights were dim, humble, tinged with regret. "I have been traveling," Varzin said. "Speaking to Ithari, who still resist the changes, trying to help them understand what I learned too late." His lights flickered. "The sergeant did something to me. When he protected us as the tower collapsed, even though we had tried to kill him. When he said it was not personal, that we were protecting what we loved. In that moment, I understood. Humanity's greatest strength is not their violence or their resilience. It is their capacity to forgive, to see enemies as people, to choose mercy when vengeance would be easier." "He wasn't perfect," Elena said quietly. "He was broken, traumatized. He came to Ithara trying to die, and found a reason to live instead. That is the human paradox. They carry such pain, yet they choose hope. They should be defeated, yet they endure. They should hate us, yet they save us." Varzin's lights pulsed in a pattern Elena had learned meant wonder. "I spent 200 years fearing that paradox. Now I teach it to my people. We are building a school, human and Ithari children learning together. We are calling it the Reeve Kathir Academy. I hope you will visit someday." Elena's eyes burned. "I would be honored." 50 years later, a human survey ship passed through the Maranth system. The captain, a young woman named Chen, descendant of Daniel's fallen squad, ran the routine scans. When the energy readings came back impossible, she investigated. 2 auroras danced in Maranth's upper atmosphere, red and gold, intertwining like DNA helixes, like lovers, like something that transcended human understanding. Chen's sensors picked up a message, encoded in both electromagnetic radiation and bioluminescent frequency. A hybrid signal. Impossible, but there. She decoded it, hands shaking, and read the words that appeared on her screen. "To whoever finds this, we are Daniel and Serenia, human and Ithari, soldier and princess, bonded. We exist between life and death, between flesh and light, choosing each other across every impossibility. If you are reading this, know that connection is worth the cost, that love transcends form, that two souls from different worlds can become one and lose nothing of what made them themselves. We are fire and sky, earth and light, forever reaching, forever touching, forever here. Tell them we are happy. Tell them we chose this. Tell them humanity, in all its beautiful insanity, was right all along. The impossible is just what nobody else has tried yet. Chen saved the message, transmitted it to Earth Command. Within a week, it had spread across human and Ythari space alike, shared and reshared, translated and retranslated. The story became legend. The legend became faith. The faith became something new. In the Reeve Kathir Academy on Maranth, teachers told the story to children of both species. They sat together, human and Ythari, touching without fear, learning each other's languages, choosing connection over division. Above them, the two auroras danced, eternal and impossible, a promise written in light and fire. Humanity had spent 10,000 years believing they were alone in the universe. Then they met the Ythari and learned they were not alone, but incompatible. Then Daniel Reeve reached into fire for a stranger's hand and proved that nothing, not biology or culture or 3,000 years of tradition, was stronger than the choice to see another being and say, "You matter." The galaxy was vast and strange and full of species that would never truly understand each other. But sometimes, in the space between stars, in the gap between different kinds of light, understanding was not the point. The point was trying, reaching, choosing to touch despite the risk. That was humanity's gift, not strength or resilience or impossible survival, but the stubborn, foolish, beautiful insistence that connection was worth any price, that love could bridge any gap, that even when separated by death and species and the laws of physics themselves, two souls could choose each other forever. And in the end, that choice echoed louder than any war, burned brighter than any sun, and lasted longer than any empire. Because some fires, once lit, never go out. They just learn to dance with the sky. Maybe the truth was never about saving galaxies or rewriting biology. Maybe it was about the simplest act in the universe, reaching for another being and refusing to let go, no matter the cost. Humanity's gift was never perfection. It was defiance wrapped in compassion, the madness to love what logic says we shouldn't, and the courage to become something new because of it. Daniel and Serenia didn't end a war. They ended the distance between two worlds that thought they could never touch. And in doing so, they proved that the human soul doesn't just survive the impossible, it chooses it. What do you think connection really means? Survival or surrender? Would you risk your life to understand someone who can never truly understand you? And if love demanded that you become something entirely new, would you still call yourself human? If this story reminded you what connection can change, write the word firebond in the comments to show you stayed until the end. Tell me, from which city or planet are you watching this? Subscribe if you believe humanity's story is far from over. Like, share, and watch the next chronicle, because among the stars, every spark of empathy keeps the universe burning a little brighter.